Yes, welcome into Snow The Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, and boy, did I need Pedialyte in my house last week. I'm Russ Joy, joined as always by the beautiful, illustrious duo of Anthony SanFilippo and Chris Therien. They're on Twitter at AntSanPhilly, at CTherien6. And why are we excited, my friends? He finally did it! He lowered the floor, lowered the ceiling. I've begged, I've pleaded. The Flyers made a trade.
He did this all because of you.
Joel Farabee.
You know this, right?
Well, you know what? It's about damn time somebody listened. I'm loud enough. Joel Farabee, Morgan Frost moved out. We thank them for their contributions to this team. We could talk about them as human beings, well-liked guys in the locker room. I have a good feeling for both of them that they're going to find a lot of success in Calgary. I mean that in earnest. But the Flyers are very clearly now in a position where things are changing, and they are bound to change quickly, guys, because Danny Briere, after completing the deal, goes on TV, goes on pregame with Jim Jackson, and notes that this is going to give the team cap flexibility to go after that center.
Yes, but
was that a flub?
No.
Was that a signal of what is to come? Does that portend a trade? Does that portend
let's
free
just say,
agency? Get into it.
Let's just say this. So I think there was a combination, like this was a kind of a perfect storm of events, right? So you hear the news becomes official from the league about the salary cap and how it's going to go up, right? And it's going up a lot of money over the next several years. It's rare that they announce how many, like this many years in advance, how much it's going up. It's usually year by year. You're waiting to find out what's the cap number going to be next year, right? This time they announce it multiple years in advance, okay? So now teams have a real sense for where they're, and I think that the teams are happy with that because now they have a better understanding of where their cap dollars fit 2, 3, 4 years out, instead of just guessing and hoping that they're right and waiting for the league to say something, right? So I think that that's a good thing. So you have that happen. The offense goes in the tank, right? And they can't score goals. They still haven't scored in. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have happened in the world since the last time the Flyers scored a goal. Okay.
The trade war started. The trade war is over.
It's right, exactly.
Guys. A lot of things happen. An entire war. Trade war has started and ended.
Yeah. A lot of things going on out there. And so when the offense started to go into the tank, and they realized, okay, we're starting to slowly slip. I mean, and it wasn't falling far out of the playoff spot, but they went from being within 3 points of a playoff spot to being within like 5 or 6. And Danny's looking at it and going, okay, maybe now's the time to pull a trigger and get something going so that we can go towards, the bottom of the standings. They probably still aren't going to make it all the way down to the bottom, but they'll probably get close to the top 5, I would think. They looked at it and go, okay, let's pull the trigger on this deal and make it happen. Because what they did, and look, I'm not a huge fan of the return for these guys. I thought Farabee and Frost probably were worth more than what they got back. In all honesty, I don't think it was a great trade, but I understand it. And from this perspective, you get out from under three years of Farabee at $5 million.
Big move.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You get out from that money. Secondly, Morgan Frost, you would have had to re-sign him, and you're talking about, if I'm guessing,
$4 to $5 million.
$4 or $5 million a year for him. So that's and he's not just going to take a 1-year deal. It's at least going to be 2 years. So that's another $4 or $5 million there, right? So now all of a sudden you've just cleared out over the next 2 years about $9 million. Okay. They're still probably going to trade somebody else. I think Ristolainen is probably the guy. I know everybody's like freaking out about the injury, but let me tell you something. If this was a serious injury, you would have heard by now that he's not playing for Team Finland at the Four Nations tournament. The fact that you have not heard that tells you that it's not as bad as you might think. So even if he doesn't play tonight or whatever. But so if you get out from under Risto's contract, now all of a sudden you've just created $13, $14 million of cap space over the next couple of years. And the cap's going up $7 million. So maybe you could start to use that money and chase bigger name free agents. I still don't think the big splash is this summer. I think you're going to see some nicer potential pieces coming in that are support players that could maybe fit on a second line kind of thing. I still think the big chase is 2 years from now, but I think that you're starting to see what the plan is in place. I don't know, Bundy. I look at Farabee and Frost, and I think that they're NHL caliber players.
No doubt.
To get a 2nd-round pick and a 7th-round pick, a pending free agent and a pending restricted free agent who has underwhelmed so far, just seems like the value. They could have gotten better value. But at the same time, I understand that you look at it and say getting out from under those contracts is a benefit as well.
It ended up being the money thing. You know, we often talk about like a hockey trade and then a money trade sometimes. I mean, this was from where the Flyers' standpoint was. For Calgary, it was a hockey trade. For the Flyers, it was a financial trade because Calgary, believe me, it's hard for them to generate the free agents that the Philadelphia Flyers can generate when they're good. People will Philadelphia is a destination. Calgary has a lot of work to do to try to get a free agent, and a lot of things have to go their way for that to happen. So from that standpoint, the best way the Flames or teams like the Flames can acquire players is to actually go trade for them, and that's how you end up keeping them. But for the Flyers, it very much, after you look at it and see who you got back and what was all involved, it appeared to be a financial decision for the Flyers. And whether or not, Anthony, you're talking about whether they're targeting somebody for, like, maybe not this summer or next summer, it may be even somebody down the road more, where they're looking at the end of another contract on another team and saying, hey, we like that guy.
Yeah.
But you don't want to tip your hand to that, right?
Correct.
Like, you can't go out and say, even whisper it to anybody, like, we like Jack Eichel. You can't really say that, because then you're tipping your hand. You can't do it anyway because of all the tampering rules and getting into the weeds. But I think that's really for what the Flyers are doing. They're freeing up space to what looks like is going to be, for certain, a larger cap and a larger hit number on teams. And that's where I think this makes sense for the Flyers.
There is another possibility here. Nobody's talking about it, but like, in a way, it's interesting, and I think they have now kind of bought themselves even more time. This almost feels like, because they've been able to clear out this money, we know dead money, retained money is coming off the cap. In a way, you can almost make the argument this is kind of resetting things. This is almost like resetting year one of rebuild. You could go one of two ways. Because you're clearing out the cap, and because you're probably going to end up with a higher pick, you could probably rationalize internally, all right, we're going to go get that one other elite level player in the draft that eventually is going to be part of the core with Mishkov. And at the same time, because you've cleared out the cap, you can go after free agents, you go after trades. Another element to this is you could play the long game. This cap flexibility now allows you to potentially be a third team in a trade that could bring you back additional compensation or another change of scenery guy. And you take on a contract that has a year or two left that's maybe not the best deal to take on, but because you have the longer view in mind, you could potentially pull back an asset in a future draft. Not that that's what I think they're going to do, but it is another potential option here. They were up against the cap. We all knew this, and you've talked about it a million times. The financial situation that this front office inherited was a horrific one. They might not say it publicly, but it was about as bad as it could be. They now enter the offseason. I mean, I think the last time the math was done, if nothing were to change, they'd have about $35 million in cap space entering this offseason. That gives you a hell of a lot of flexibility with free agents, trades, draft day, beyond.
Yeah,
Even going into next year.
Yeah, some of that's, you got to keep in mind, you're trying to save for guys that are currently on a team that are going to need new contracts as well. So you don't have completely that much money in reality. But yes, they will have a lot more flexibility than they would have had. I just felt like, and I get it. Like I said, I get it. I just felt like there could have been more return for those two guys.
Can I posit something to you? Because you and I often disagree on this.
Yeah.
I'm usually the one who's more bullish on trade the guy, get rid of him.
Yeah.
Like Risto is almost the perfect example, right? Because the one thing that I kept coming back to is you just don't want him to get hurt. Like if you do make the decision that you want to trade him, you don't want for the second year in a row that teams are kind of putting out feelers that he gets hurt and that goes off the table. You are often the one who says, hang on to the guy because he's going to have better value up to the deadline.
Yeah.
Is there a case to be made that their best window to trade these guys for a return maybe was last year?
Well,
like that they maybe missed that window? Could they have benefited from hanging on to them longer? Do you think there wasn't a better package
I don't know.
could have come at the deadline? Where you at?
I don't know about Farabee. I think Farabee was what he was. I think Frost, maybe you could have looked at the offseason and said he had a big finish to last year, looked good in the second half. Maybe that's a guy, if you weren't sure was going to be part of your future, that maybe you could have moved him and gotten more value from him because he put that second half performance on offensively and has that skill set that other teams might covet for a center. I think that maybe there was a little bit more value with him. And then he comes into this season, struggles again. And it's like, okay, well, now we see that there's inconsistency there if you're another team. And you say, all right, maybe his value isn't what we once thought it was. So maybe on Morgan Frost. Farabee, I'm not so sure. I think you know, with the contract that he had, you know, look, you look at it and say he's a guy who should be a 20 goal scorer, 20 to 25 goal scorer in the league. It's probably worth $5 million. It's probably going to be that. Yeah, he's had a little bit of a slower start this year, but even with a slow start last year, he did still finish with 22 goals. Yeah. Right. So I look at a guy like that and say his value was probably his value. I'm not convinced that they got enough in return, though. Like a second round pick is really all you got out of this. Let's be honest.
The cap space.
And the cap space.
Yeah, but you know what, though? But we've seen the other side of what cap space looks like, right? With like trading Shane Gostisbehere, where you got to send a pick with him.
Well, yeah, oh yeah.
So you know, at the same time, it kind of worked itself out. I feel by freeing up the cap money, you got yourself out of it. Like Farabee, there's not a. Actually, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I was wondering how many players of Farabee's caliber making $5 million at his age.
Yeah,
you know, that's a win alone, dumping his salary to me, because I agree with that. He was what he was. And I think you get a pretty good idea of who he's going to be in 5 years. But I do agree with Anthony. I think Frost, there was a little bit maybe more to Frost. Like I'm a believer, really, I am, and we'll see over time that Frost can benefit a team more than 60 points. I believe that.
I think he's going to flourish in Calgary.
Yeah, I think he might too. And you know the other thing too, you won't really notice it maybe tonight or tomorrow or the next couple of days. Players that come from torts, when you leave a team like Philly, when you've been handled it's been tough sledding for a player. Yeah. When you go somewhere else, you feel like you're in heaven, paradise. Yeah. You know, and I mean that. And those players usually, when guys leave torts or he's been fired and they're still on the team, they end up flourishing because they don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah, and I feel like the team thought that two seasons ago, let's just say, Farabee and Frost were going to be part of the core here, and then a number of players kind of just passed them along the way of saying, okay, when we build this team, we think these guys are going to be here and in these roles, and not Joel Farabee and not Morgan Frost. And we started to hear about it, a little over a year ago. Like they were talking, we've talked about Morgan Frost being traded for close to 2 years, really, since the trade deadline 2 years ago, right? And so they started to wonder then, and they gave him the time. Farabee, I think that they had a little bit more hope for, and it just never came to fruition. And so, that's, look, I understand why they needed to go. And I understand clearing out the cap space, and Bundy's spot on when he says, sometimes if you have a bad contract, you have to trade it and trade a draft pick for somebody to take that money. Right. So I get the fact that you kind of felt like you got out from under it and didn't have to do that. I still think that there was probably a little bit more that they could have done with those two guys, but
I assume
it's okay.
They canvas the league, though, right? This isn't the Mavericks in the middle of the night trading a 25-year-old cornerstone for a broken down player. I get it. Nobody here likes the NBA, but like it's not as if it was just a one team conversation. And you have to imagine, because for the last 2 years, Frost's name has been out there, and we know that for the last year or so, there have been teams with interest in Farabee. Like you've probably done due diligence in canvassing the league.
Yeah.
At some point, I do think you kind of do have to consider, and I get your thought here that it might not have been enough. The cap space matters.
Oh, sure does. I don't disagree with that at all.
And listen, what's my thing? Lower the ceiling, lower the floor. This does that. I mean, I think last week we had a whole conversation where it was, can this team compete in a playoff series with New Jersey or with Washington? Yeah. And when we got done, I threw up in my mouth. And then I thought about it, and I was like, that actually is part of the problem, because if you could have gotten to the playoffs and thought you can give them a run, you're not really doing the whole rebuild thing the right way. Now, in this case, you've now moved off of a guy who probably has the best vision, second best playmaking ability on the team, third best in Frost, and a guy who you thought was going to be a guy who could probably be around a 30-goal scorer, or at least you hoped he would become one in Farabee. Taking those guys off the table, this team's going to have a hard time scoring. Right? Do either of the players who came back here, does Kuzmenko move the needle for you in a meaningful way?
No, but to be fair to Kuzmenko, each time that he's been in a new city, the first time he's gotten there, he's put up some numbers.
Yeah.
Like when he first got to Vancouver, he scored 39 goals.
Yeah.
When he first got to Calgary last year, I think he put up like 14 goals in 25 games or something like that. Like he has that ability to kind of be like a sugar rush, and then all of a sudden he falls off, which is what's happened in both cases. So technically, could he potentially add some scoring here right off the cuff? Yeah, because we've seen him do it before. But do I believe he's a long-term thing? No, I don't.
There was the report that came out, and now I'm not going to fan the flames of this because as fun as it would be, there was the thought that was put out there that Briere and/or Jones had reached out to Kuzmenko and had talked to him about why they needed him to waive the no movement clause and that they needed him, that it was, part of something else. And so then people obviously went, oh, well, Kuzmenko is not only former teammates with Mishkov, but he was also former line mates with Elias Pettersson. And then people started going, the cap space, you got this, you got that. Is Kuzmenko going to be the piece that ultimately, convinces you got to get Pettersson here? I don't necessarily think it's that.
No, it's certainly not because Vancouver traded JT Miller
to the Rangers.
So they kept Pettersson. So
now when you see a team go and get a guy like Kuzmenko, I think it was Bill Meltzer was the one who put this out. If it wasn't, it was somebody else on the beat, and apologies for not giving the proper attribution here. But there was a clip that was going around of Tocchet talking about Kuzmenko when he was still on the team. And if you had done an AI render to put John Tortorella and the Flyers logo behind him instead of Tocchet in Vancouver, it sounded like the kind of frustration that will probably come with Kuzmenko playing under Torts. Is there a path here in a limited run through the end of the season where they don't butt heads? Or do you think that Kuzmenko's just style of play is going to it's just going to be what it is?
I think it's too short a run.
Okay.
I think it's what they have 30 games left, 25, 27 games left, whatever it is. Yeah. Like that, it's not long enough to really burn Torts up to the point where there will be headbutting going on. I think he'll look at it like, okay, this guy can't play, whatever. He'll be out of here at the end of the season kind of thing. Like I don't think it gets to that point.
Do you think there was anything that went into this decision, Kuzmenko specifically? I mean, obviously UFA at the end of the year, so that kind of is what it is. Like that ends up working out. Is there a Mishkov element to it where it's just another voice, somebody familiar, trying to help him kind of find his footing in the league?
I don't. I think that it was, if you want to know what I think it was Calgary was like, hey, we'll take Farabee and we'll figure out that contract down the line, but you need to take similar money back for this season so that we can make it work this year. And I honestly think that that's what it was. And they needed Kuzmenko to waive the no trade clause to make that happen. And I think that's what I really, really believe there. So no, I don't. As for Peltier, I think, there's some small interest in that. I know they scouted him pretty good. And he started to come along later this season in the AHL. He has not lived up to his first round. We were talking about this. Sometimes you have first round picks that just don't work, right?
Yeah.
He has not lived up to that billing.
Late first round.
He was 26th, I think, overall.
26.
Yeah. And he's only played 61 games in the NHL over 3 seasons. And so it's not like he's had a consistent opportunity.
Right.
They're going to give him a chance here. Let's see what he looks like for 27 games. He's an RFA at the end of the year. If they like what they see, maybe they give him a contract and see if he could be part of it. So you're taking a flyer on him, but that's really all it is. Speaking of the weirdness of Kuzmenko, did you happen to see the video that I embedded in my story
about the ghost?
The ghost.
Yeah, I did. He tells the story. You can go read this over on Pattison.
Yeah,
but Kuzmenko had a thing where he was like in a hotel room, I guess, when he was playing in the KHL.
He was in the KH of the second tier of the KHL, the AHL version of the KHL.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the MHL? I don't remember.
Yeah, I forget what it is. Yeah.
But he thought he saw a little girl, like a ghost of a little girl sitting in the chair in his room, and he like freaked out.
And he asked his teammates to come sleep in his room with him.
Or if he could like crash with them. So we're not quite at like the Briz bear lost in woods.
He had a very Briz feel to it.
Oh, it did.
When I watched that video, I was like, this guy reminds me of Briz.
Some Russians, man.
Now, Bundy, I think it was 2 weeks ago when we were in the studio, we were kind of talking about trades and the impact it has on the locker room and all that. And I think it was Sanheim was quoted as saying that a bunch of the guys had gotten together before Farabee and Frost left town, got together, had some drinks, shot the shit, had some memories, a good time. This to me is a clear indication that like 2 weeks ago we talked about the players want to believe that they can make the playoffs. You move these two guys, it's, I think, a pretty clear indication from the front office that, like, we don't expect the playoffs. What do you think is, like, the thing that maybe hits the locker room harder? Missing those guys, not having their presence anymore, not having their friends, or really what is a tacit acknowledgement that, like, you guys are going to go out and compete every night, but it's going to be a much tougher sledding to make the playoffs?
It's a little bit of both, to be honest with you. You're losing your friends, like the guys that you're used to and that you've enjoyed having there. And that's a tough blow when you lose like two guys like that.
Yeah.
You know, because they are your friends and you've grown together. No matter what the product on the ice looks like, that gets left on the ice when you go home at night, and those guys are still your brothers and your friends. The problem is with the other team, with the rest of the team after the trade, it does feel like the offense it's a bad time right now. The offense is really dried up. And then you're taking away a guy in Frost and Farabee. At least Frost, certainly, you know, like he can create a little bit of offense. He has in late seasons before. So I think there's a little bit of both of that to it. So you lose your friends, but you're also kind of being said, we feel like we're far enough out of the playoffs that it's going to be a real reach for us to climb to get to the 8th spot. I think that's where they're at.
Can you think of a trade when you played that really hit the room hard, hit you guys hard, and you had a hard time dealing with it?
Well, the Rod Brindamore one was odd because, you know, he'd been there. He was so professional. But, you know, he gets traded at lunchtime. I remember we're in Pittsburgh, and he's gone in 10 minutes. Like, he doesn't even care. He wanted to go play in Carolina that night. Like, Rod was just like that. But I wouldn't say it was like one of those ones where it emotionally scarred the room, but it was kind of a weird trade. Even though it worked out, like Primo coming in, Brindamore going out, there are some big trades. There's other guys where you lose your friends. I remember we lost Dave Babich one year at the trade deadline. He was a really good guy, come to be a veteran, and he got moved out. There are other guys. Michael Renberg, I remember getting traded one year. Was a tough one when he went to Tampa, I believe.
Yep.
But you absorb it, and the new guys come in, and you become friends with them, and then, you know, that's how it goes. But, you know, I mean, in terms of having those guys in your team, though, yeah, I mean, you're a little bit sad for sure when you lose a teammate, but at the same time, you're a professional. It's probably a lot different where the Flyers' mindset is right now, far out of the playoffs, rather than if they were still trying, like they were making a hockey trade to try to better their team, to try to get in. Like Calgary kind of made a deal like that to try to solidify it, like give themselves some hope. They were selling hope to their players, getting Frost and Farabee, where the Flyers are making financial and strategic decisions for down the road.
Does this change Torts' outlook or mentality? I know that, like, the easy answer is no, but is there a nuance that you have to approach this locker room with down the stretch here for the last 30 or so games? Like, he's going to try to get the most out of them.
Sure.
They're going to try to pick up every point. You and I you've yelled, and I've kind of dug back at you a few times about you can't tell players to lose. They're not going to be good enough to win a lot of these games, but they're going to bust their ass to do it. But does he need to change anything to not lose that room? And I'm going to go to Bundy first, because knowing where their headspace is at, he did say, you know, it hit the guys hard, but they're professionals. You got to kind of move past it. Does he have to do anything different to keep that locker room together? It's apparently been a very tight team all year. Does he have to approach anything differently with that group? Or down his last stretch?
You know, again, everybody in the room knows his MO. The new players coming in are going to know it and figure it out really quick. They're going to talk to guys. But I don't think there's really that much that's going to change in terms of what he's trying to do. He's trying to send the same message, play structurally sound. One thing Torts will never give up on is his belief in what he's trying to coach and preach. And so that's his systems and his defensive effort and the way that he gets guys to compete harder than they usually should with another coach. So I don't think anything's really going to change. I think that the one thing they're going to want to do, the Flyers have said that they wanted the culture to continue to be in a traditional form to what this group really is all about, what the history of the team's about. So they're not going to have a step back in terms of their effort or how hard they're going to work, because that would be counterproductive to everything that they've done so far. You know, when I talked to Jonesy said, you know, we don't know what kind of results we're going to expect. This is last year, but we expect this team to work and this group to work under John Tortorella. And I think, you know, some nights they've lost games, some nights they've come back when they've been down. But one thing I'll give this team an awful lot of credit for is how they've competed most nights. Mm-hmm. They just don't have the horses to score. I mean, we're seeing it right now, but to make that big goal or that huge goal going back in time to where they needed, there could be difference makers in the game. They just don't have that. And that's why Danny and Jonesy are trying so hard to change the landscape and what this team is going to look like as they move down the road.
Now, Ant brought up a thing prior to the show he wanted to kind of go down memory lane a little bit here with Danny because this trade is, I think, what? What do you think?
No, I do want to do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is just for a technical reason. I got to put these back in one at a time for you.
Oh, no, I mean, I can see them.
You can see all of them?
I think so. Everything that you dropped there, I can see.
No, then it's not everything.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we'll make the best of it.
Yeah.
Ant wants to kind of go back and take a look at Danny Briere's moves to this point because a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was a week ago, I don't remember. I say a lot of shit. I said, I don't think that there's been one huge move yet from Briere in terms of acquisition. Like you haven't had that one moment that kind of stands out as the key piece of your time as a front office executive. With Chuck Fletcher, it's very much the Kevin Hayes signing. With Danny, I don't think he was there yet. There have been moves. There have been moves to get off of players and bad contracts. You haven't brought a star to town yet. Mishkov is kind of the outlier. He fell to number 7. But Ant pulled all of these, and I believe it was Kevin Kurse over at The Athletic, worth the subscription. Kevin kind of pulled all of Danny's trades since...
There was 14 total.
14? Well, we're not doing 14.
I'm just saying, he's done 14 trades total.
So 14 trades have happened over the course of his tenure. Let's take a look at them and kind of figure out if the Flyers are better off or not. Or do you want to facilitate it, Ant, since it was kind of your job?
I will facilitate speaking-wise, but if you want to pull them up, I'm still copying them over to you since you can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
So I
have it here. So the first one was the Provorov trade to Columbus.
Yes.
Got back Kevin Connaughton, Hayden Hodgson. Jesus.
Yes.
There was
more to it than that.
There was a Cal Peterson, Sean Walker, Helga Gran.
Yeah. So
first-round pick that became Oliver Bonk, a second-round pick, another second-round pick. That was a big deal.
Well, yeah, and then Walker becomes a first-round, gets flipped to become another first-round pick. So in essence, you get 2 firsts and 2 seconds
for Ivan
for Provorov. Yes, you had to eat some salary with Cal Peterson, right? But at the same time, you did get four first and second-round draft picks out of that trade, which is way more than Ivan Provorov is worth. Correct?
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah. I mean, so like, I look at that one and I say that's a win.
Yeah,
that's a win.
That's a win.
Almost exactly 3 weeks later, Kevin Hayes gets dealt to St. Louis.
Now you have to retain some of that salary.
Correct.
But then when you think about what St. Louis had to do when they traded him to Pittsburgh, they had to give up a second-round pick, like Bundy was talking about. They had to give up a second-round pick for the Penguins to retain their half of, take half of their, whatever, take that salary. So like that's a lot to give up. So the Blues traded 2 picks for a guy that they barely used.
That's the kind of thing that follows a guy.
Yeah, it does. I think it kind of follows a guy. Right? Yeah.
So then a couple days later,
they traded the second-round pick that they got from the Provorov deal.
And a 6th round in Chicago.
And they moved up to draft Bjarnason.
Yes. Who they believe is a potential goalie of the future.
At the time was ranked as the number 1 North American goaltender by Central Scouting.
Yep.
Whether you buy into that or not, it's your prerogative. But at the same time, you look at that trade and go, okay, they took a chance, didn't really cost them anything. Mm-hmm. They just moved up, it cost them a 6th round pick, and they moved up and got a guy that they felt could potentially be one of the goalies of the future for this organization.
Man, I forgot about this guy. August 29th of 2023.
Yeah.
They trade David Kasha.
Yeah.
Remember David Kasha?
David Kasha.
Yeah.
Yep. Not David Kaza.
Yeah.
It's German for cheese.
Yeah.
To Carolina and ended up getting Massimo Rizzo.
And if you remember, that deal was kind of a make good by the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Because they were supposed to get Rizzo as part of the Tony DeAngelo thing that the league wouldn't allow.
Yeah.
And so the Carolina
that was because they had signed DeAngelo. Wasn't that because they had signed DeAngelo, but they weren't allowed to trade him within the
Yes, and it was only off by a couple days or whatever it was, right? So Carolina did a make good and gave the Flyers the player that they were going to originally trade for Tony DeAngelo for a player who Kasha's playing in the Czech Republic, I think, right? He's somewhere in Europe. So anyway, that was that.
So to that point, it had mostly been
positive,
sending players away that you wanted to clear a cap from. Then January 8th, 2024, William Gauthier was traded to Anaheim, bringing back Jamie Drysdale and that 2025 second-round pick. Yeah. This is still a trade that I think the Flyers will historically, I think 10 years from now, they will have lost. But at the same time, you were kind of in a leveraged position there.
Yeah, for sure. And you're not, and I tend to agree with you. I think down the line, ultimately it will be a loss. You can't grade it that way yet, though, because Gauthier has not been good for Anaheim, so much so that they've even moved him out of that center position. He's now a full-time winger, which Briere told us on the day that they traded him, right? He said for a guy that we view as a winger now, not a center. So we'll see. I mean, I still think Gauthier ends up becoming a 30-goal scorer in this league, and I'm not convinced, even though Drysdale's been better since that Anaheim game. Let's go back over the last few weeks. I think he's shown some improvement, but he was so far off the table prior to that. Like they nursed a very minor injury because he was not playing well and really wanted to try and get him going. Look, I don't think Jamie Drysdale's ever going to be a top pair guy. May not even be a second pair guy. Is he a third pair NHL defenseman? Probably long term. And if that's what you get him and a second round pick for a guy who's a 30-goal scorer, you probably are on the losing side of that deal.
Maybe you do get him to a season where he has like a somewhat respectable one, is effective on the power play. You get some GM hot and heavy feeling like, like maybe the way that some GMs looked at Ghost for a good long while. Yeah. And they think, we're taking a shot. Yeah. And then maybe you do look at the 10 years down the line, you look at the flow chart of that trade. The flow chart
might be different.
And maybe whatever the return you end up getting for Drysdale down the line ends up being the more valuable player. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Okay, so that was, in fairness, so that was the first one that the fans as a whole went, what the actual...
Yes, but if you look at the organization, Briere and Jones, these hands were kind of tied there. Like they had to trade him.
Yes.
Right, and so they got with the best that they could get in that situation.
It was 2 months later is when the Sean Walker deal went down.
Yep.
This is while the Flyers were in the midst of that. Will they, won't they make the playoffs? Do they not want to rebuild? They traded Walker. It had that cascading effect. Sealer got hurt shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
The entire season went to hell.
Yeah.
That trade netted them a first-round pick in 2025, fifth-round pick in 2026, the Ryan Johansson contract,
which is still unresolved.
And wasn't there?
I think there's still
there was another pick that came as a result of something else.
So it's the next thing which you don't even see is that they ate part of Noah Hannifin's salary. They became kind of like that, and they got a 5th round pick out of that, which they ended up drafting that kid Noah Powell, who some people like within the organization. They think that there might be a bottom 6 forward down the line there if he develops properly. Not anything to be super excited about. But
it's better than just a throwaway in a trade. So the question, I guess, now, as we look at that history, a lot of it is offloading players. So my point still stands in that there has not been a big acquisition that's come in. The acquisition that's been brought in is draft capital, which, big rebuild guy. At what point, Bundy, do you think it makes the most sense for this team to actively explore that trade market and make that splash? Do you think that they look at it one more year, they carry the cap flexibility into next year, monitor the market? You never know what player is going to come up.
Yeah.
Guys come available. Nobody thought Mikko Rantanen was going to be available, right? Do you take that cap space into next season, really target 2026 as the summer that you want to make the free agency splash? Is that what you do, or do you feel like you owe it to the fans to start spending to the cap again, and we're back kind of at square one?
That's a good question and a fair question. I'm not really sure, really. I think the way I look at Danny with it, I think he's going to do a little bit of both. I think he's going to have the cap space clearly in the back of his mind to try to bang out the best free agent that he can possibly get in 2026. But he's got some stuff. He's got some picks for this summer's draft. I mean, if something's out there and it makes sense, and they're a guy that they're going to covet, they're not going to wait a year to try to replace who they already want. So I think if there's somebody out there, why not try to make that move? I mean, I don't think you're really going to jump the shark, because if you're waiting a year anyway, then you may as well bring in that piece if it's out there and it's desired and it's somebody that you've targeted. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think doing it that way. I think sometimes waiting, you might miss something that's there. I do agree with you. Like, who would have known that Rantanen was there? I mean, and Nakash the other day, I mean, he was really good, right? Like, I mean, that was an unbelievable, really good pickup by Colorado. Like, Colorado, you talk about a winning and a losing trade. Yeah. That'll be one that you'll be looking at for years to see who won that trade.
Well, because the only way Carolina wins that trade is if they win the Stanley Cup this year.
That's correct.
because
or if they re-sign him and win a cup during that contract. But I don't
think they're going to re-sign him.
Yeah.
Carolina's ownership group is not that kind of ownership group. I think this is he makes the run and then signs somewhere else next year. If you want my honest opinion on that.
Does he want to come up 95? Spend some time at Wells Fargo Center?
So what I think is important to point out is I think that what you want to do is look, if you could get a big name free agent this summer who is willing to say, hey, I'm going to make Philadelphia my destination, great. I'm not convinced that you're going to have that guy this summer. So what I think you need to do is I think you need to have some good supporting players who you can convince and say, hey, listen, 25-26 might not be the season, but 26-27 is, and we're going to use the fact that you're here to kind of start attracting other players. So I think that you might see that those more secondary types, like Konechny level talents that are really good players, but maybe not a superstar before you go out and get that number one center, right?
All right, can we play the game where I say the NHL is full of bitches in the front offices, that they're all just a bunch of old boys who don't like to step on each other's toes, and I think restricted free agency is a total sham. Guess what? With the cap going up,
it's going to change.
I would love to believe
that
this front office has the cojones to make the move.
Yeah.
One name that's going around is Wyatt Johnston.
Yeah.
22, right-hand shot, could be a 1C of the future. Certainly fits the timeline age-wise with Mishkov. If you're Briere, do you consider offer sheeting this offseason? Or do you worry, like a lot of GMs in this league for whatever reason seem to, do you worry about stepping on Tootsie Toes and hurting somebody's feelings, or do you just say, I want to win. I want to actually do the best thing for the team?
I think that restricted free agency thing is going to change. I think you're going to started to see it last year when what's his name? The two guys from Edmonton got pilfered by restricted free agency.
Oh, was it Draisaitl?
No.
Oh, no. I know you're talking.
I'll go out to the comments in a second.
Yeah.
Somebody will have it.
Yeah, somebody will have it.
I know what you're talking about.
Just the names escape me, but they lost two players to restricted free agency when the other teams put offer sheets out.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of opened the door, and I think it's going to, because it was two guys from the same team, right? It was no longer just one guy here and there getting thrown the offer sheets. It was two guys from the same team. So I think that kind of opened the door, and I think that with the cap going up, you're right, Russ. I think that's going to be a thing that happens in the future. Could the Flyers dabble in that way? Yeah, I think that they can. I absolutely think that they can. Look, it was
Holloway and Broberg.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Broberg was the guy. It was the more important guy. He was the better player. The Blues took both of them. But anyway, so I do think that that's a thing that can happen. Whether or not, you sit there and go, oh, are they interested in Wyatt Johnston? I have not heard that name.
I haven't either.
Right? But again, it's early. It's February. That's a conversation for May, right? Like we'll start having that conversation in a couple months. But right now.
That to me is like that is a fun line of thinking, though, if you're a fan. And again, that's why the beauty of, and I get it, you don't think that they got enough for Farabee and Frost. Whether it's true or not, that flexibility that they picked up cap-wise allows you to start having these thoughts. And that, to me, when you're kind of worried about potential apathy with the fan base, especially as we expect them to lose considerable number of games here probably down the stretch, the one thing that gives people hope is knowing that there are multiple avenues to try to acquire talent. And it's amazing because my tone about this team a week ago was considerably different from where it is now. And a big part of that is the flexibility that they're going to have going into the offseason. I think I said to you guys a couple weeks ago, it's like the old meme of the little guy with the stick poking something, saying, like, do something. The Flyers did something. And in this case, it appears that it'll work out. I don't know. I feel pretty good. You feeling a little bit better about the direction of the team? Are you sad that we're not probably going to get to cover the playoffs this year?
Like, do I feel any better? I've always felt that that they were going to do this the right way. I did. So like, it's not that this doesn't change anything. I just, I don't hate the trade that they made. I just didn't feel like, I felt like they could have probably gotten a little bit more. That's all. It's not a bad trade at all. It's just, I wish they could have gotten a little bit more in that deal. That's all.
I'll take the money.
That's a guy.
Stick to cap space.
Yeah,
that's what I will. No, and I know what Anthony's saying, but there's a give and take in it, and I think that ended up being what the give and take was.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to get to today?
No, nothing.
We're running on the shorter side.
Well, how about
were there comments that you wanted to get to from over in the?
We could get
people
to,
have been
we could get
rabid
to some
in the
comments,
comment
but there was
section, which we
something
love.
I wanted to point out. The Flyers play Utah tonight, right?
Oh, love Utah.
First time out there, first time in Salt Lake City. They are on the verge, if they don't score tonight, of doing something that's only been done once in the last 95 years. And that would be getting shut out 4 consecutive games.
No way. It's only happened one other time.
The Oakland Seals, 67-68.
Ooh.
Other than that,
Oh,
it happened 4 times in the late 20s. And then the all-time record is Chicago Blackhawks were shut out 8 consecutive times, 1928-29.
Jesus.
All right, that goes way back. But yes, it has not been done. First of all, it was the first time that it had been done since 1819 by the Buffalo Sabres. First time a team had been shut out 3 in a row. But yes, if it becomes 4 in a row, it's only happened 4 times in the history of hockey and only once since expansion, and that was the Oakland Seals in 67-68.
Can since we're on Utah, can we play a real quick game here? Because I'm gonna pop this onto the big screen, and then I'll see if I can also share it within the.
Oh yeah, this whole
within the
thing
chat.
too. I forgot about
But
this. This is worth
Utah
talking
is
Looks
in
like
the
Vancouver. The
so-
one in the middle looks like the Vancouver
Utah
Canucks.
is in the midst. Let me see. I'm gonna try to share it here to the chat as well, so that they can get a better eye on it. But Utah is in the midst of trying, for God knows what reason, to rename the team. They've got Utah Hockey Club, Utah Outlaws, Utah Mammoth. The Mammoth obviously is a mammoth. The Outlaws, very clearly a cowboy with his COVID mask. Just kidding. And then over there, that very much looks like what was supposed to be the Utah Yetis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they bailed on the Yetis. They had a weird name. I don't remember what the other name. It almost looked like Wasatch or something.
Wasatch.
What is a Wasatch? Is that like a Sasquatch? What's a Wasatch?
It's like the abominable snowman
but
from
lives
the
in Utah.
Rudolph movie.
Okay.
That's a Wasatch.
Yeah, that would have been a stupid name. But
Yeah.
but they very clearly wanted to be the Yetis. Okay. Guys, if you had to
Well,
go now,
that's a mountain.
well, it's a mountain with a face. You could see the Yeti face.
Yeah.
Okay. Now over here, that one corresponds to there. That's there. That's there.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're out of order, but they are. If it were you, which way do you go if you're marketing this team? The Utah Mammoth, the Outlaws, or the Hockey Club?
So I like Mammoth best, but I wish it was plural.
The Mammoths?
Yeah. Because it's more than one. Like, why are you just one woolly mammoth?
Tampa Bay's the Lightning, not the Lightning.
Yeah, but lightning is plural too. If there's multiple lightning strikes, it's lightning. It's not lightnings.
I actually, as bad as it sounds, I like the Outlaws the best. It's just,
Really?
yeah.
I
mean,
don't like
you
that
can't
logo,
you
though.
can't just call them Utah Hockey Club and then have like some snowman with a face inside a mountain, which is kind of dumb. The Mammoth, like, why? What's the Mammoth? What's the tie to Utah from the Mammoth? The Outlaws, I know it's out in the West. I mean, just watch that show on Netflix too about the Mormon War back in the 1800s, which was an amazing TV series. I don't know if you saw it at all.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'll watch
Yeah,
it.
it was phenomenal. Yeah, I
You
think
never
it's still
pointed me the
still
wrong direction.
top 10 still on Netflix.
Huh.
Um,
Oh my God! There is a comment.
I like the Outlaws.
Donald Biordi wins. My God,
The Latter-day Skate.
the Latter-day Skates.
Well, we had the other one too. The what was the Utah the Mighty Mormons?
Yes.
The Storm and Mormons.
Storm and Mormons. That was
Oh
it.
my God!
Yeah.
All right, guys, you've.
But why do these
you've outdone
why do
yourselves.
these logos look like the logos that are like on
on Chell?
clip art? Like
Yeah,
like these are terrible.
yeah, they're not ideal.
I don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, it's.
I'd like to thank the third grade class at the Utah Elementary School for putting together some logos for us last week.
Not good. Not good.
All right, so I derailed us about Utah. And what was the other thing that you wanted to get to today?
No.
I thought there was another thing that you wanted to talk about. It was just the
The fact
shutout streak.
the shutout streak could be historic if they get
Wow.
shut out tonight.
Was there anything else that you saw in the comments today that you really wanted to get to? And apologies to everybody that we didn't get to your comments.
No, the only thing, and it was a while back, and I don't remember who made the comment, but they were asking about, any potential rumors about centers. And I don't have anything huge as far as that's concerned. but I do know that Toronto is a team that's been scouting the Flyers a bit. I think that they would be interested in Risto if in fact he could get moved. Who might the Flyers be interested there as far as a young center? That Fraser Minton is a name that I've heard come up to me that they've been looking at. 20 years old. He was a second-round pick in 22. He's only played 19 games at the NHL level, 15 of them this year. He had a couple of goals. He's only played 16 games in the minors this year. So must have had an injury at some point. He's only played 31 combined games. But, yeah, there's a guy that they're kind of looking at. Whether or not they ultimately are interested in that guy, we'll see. But I do know that they did scout him.
Okay.
So there's a little nugget for you.
Who doesn't love a little nugget?
Little nugget.
I tend to prefer the 10-piece nugget.
Yeah.
12-piece now at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Love the nugs.
The little nugget.
I took us off the rails. We're gonna do this right now, and we can ask people in the comments.
Yeah.
Chicken nuggets, chicken tenders.
I'm a tender.
I'm a tender guy.
Yeah.
How many?
I can probably 4 to 6, somewhere in that range.
Probably 3. 3 tenders. Yeah, I don't need as much.
Watching your figure.
I have been lately. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
you're looking good.
But four probably would be my limit. I mean, you get older, you lose your appetite a little bit. You notice that, Ant? I feel like I am. I don't eat quite as much as I used to.
Don't binge eat that much.
No,
That's what.
Oh, I'm the king of binge eating.
I used to be a binge eat. Not anymore. I don't binge eat anymore.
I shouldn't do that.
So
As somebody,
try and eat healthier. My daughter's getting married this summer. I want to lose 20.
good on you.
there you go.
So I've been eating some fig Newtons.
Is that wedding?
had fig
Is that
Newtons.
wedding being? Is that wedding local? By the way?
What's that?
Is that wedding local?
It's going to be in North Jersey.
North Jersey. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't.
Don't ask for the listen. Don't.
I wasn't asking for
Don't have people
specifics.
showing up to Bundy's daughter's.
No,
wedding,
I wasn't asking for specifics.
Oh, it's the venue. You
I
know?
just wasn't sure. Well,
Big
because
names, lose 20.
he plays in Indianapolis, right?
He does. He's a free agent, so he's
Yeah.
got to get that sorted out first. But great
Yeah.
guy and happy for Izzy. But I mean, my point wasn't about the wedding. It was about me trying to lose a little bit of weight. I put it on, and a few years ago, I got really skinny. Where people are like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just
lost
just a freaky weight loss. Like I would do crazy stuff when I go, but I'll do it again. But I don't want to ever get back as skinny as I once was. Like 8 years ago, it was just too much. But losing 15, 20 pounds for a wedding, I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
Just keep it off in the summer.
There's one last thing that I want to get to today before we head out.
Yep.
Now, I'm sure we'll probably touch on this during Press Row Show because we have, Thursday and Saturday. We'll be down here. There's a football team in town that happens to be playing in a very important game on Sunday.
Oh yeah.
I want to get your predictions. You can give a little bit of analysis. Eagles, Chiefs. We are now, 5 days away?
Oof.
5 days away?
There were 2.
Kansas City looking for the unprecedented three-peat. Your team, your town, your Philadelphia Eagles looking to avenge a loss 2 years ago.
It actually isn't unprecedented. It's unprecedented in the Super Bowl era.
That's why I said Super Bowl. I didn't say championships.
Well, but the Green Bay Packers, they won the first two Super Bowls.
Yeah.
They also won the NFL championship the year before the first Super Bowl.
Oh,
So they technically won 3 in a row.
I got
but not 3 Super Bowls, and they don't count. The Pottsville Maroons once won an NFL championship that no longer gets recognized, but it was not a Super Bowl. So, guys, answer the question. Eagles, Chiefs, who walks away with the win?
I'll start. Kansas City beat them 2 years ago. I think the way the Eagles are playing with Saquon they're playing really, really well. But man, Mahomes doesn't lose. This is a tough one. It really is. I'm going with the Eagles 30-23. I'm going with the Eagles 30-23. I think they find a way to do it. I think the running game takes precedent. I think they're able to open up their passing game with a good run game, and I think that Kansas City, for the first time, will probably realize that they're a little bit thin. I may be wrong. I may come back to you next week and say, you know what? Fuck it. Nobody's going to beat Mahomes, and that's just the way it goes.
We gotta get it. Well, where's it at? There it is. That might be the longest time we've ever gone into an episode without
I forgot we were bombing today. But anyway, that's where I'm at. I think the Eagles have played I'm hoping the Saquon Barkley run show is enough that it opens up for the passing game in the second half. I'm going Eagles 30-23. That's what I hope happens. But I may also be back here next week saying, like, what was I thinking? How was Mahomes going to possibly lose that game? You know,
This is the 5th time in the history of the Super Bowl that coaches have matched up a second time. The previous 4, the team that won, the coach that won the first time also won the second time. Right? Difference here is that, I think Vic Fangio is to me is a levels the playing field a bit.
Not a good history against Mahomes, though.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. The Chiefs have done a good job against him, but again, you look at Miami. That team that defense wasn't nearly as good as the Eagles' defense is this year. So I definitely think this is a very close game, but I think this is a low-scoring Super Bowl. I do not think we're going to have a lot of fireworks with these two teams. I think the Eagles are going to try and ball control it. I think Kansas City's defense is very good and will limit the Eagles as well. And I think this is it comes down to whoever has the ball last, field goal opportunity kind of game. And I just trust Kansas City's kicker more than I trust the Eagles kicker right now. I think that's the concerns that the Philly fans have had about Jake Elliott could come to fruition in this game. I'm going to take the Chiefs in a low-scoring game, and I think it's going to be like 24-20 or something like that, or whatever, 24-21, somewhere in that range. It's going to be low-scoring.
If you're scared, get a dog.
It's not scared.
Hungry dogs run faster.
It's not scared. It's objective analysis.
I get what Anthony's saying. All right, Russ, what about you?
There is no scenario in which the Chiefs win via a blowout.
No,
that is off the table.
Right. I don't think either team blows out. To be honest with you,
I would say the Eagles have a better chance
if I had
of a double-digit win.
If I had to pick a team to win by 10, it would be the Eagles, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Saquon Barkley has been an unstoppable force. The one team in the AFC that I thought had a legitimate chance of stopping them was Baltimore because of Derrick Henry. I don't think Kansas City has seen anything like what this Eagles team is going to present to them. I think this Chiefs team is the weakest of the 3 that has made it to the Super Bowl. Travis Kelce's best days are very far behind him. And this secondary, if it can hold up, if Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean can continue to play like fifth-year vets, you get a big play out of big play Slay, you get some CJ, GJ causing mayhem, Zach Bond being a stud, and that defensive line. Maybe Brandon Graham coming back, giving you the emotional boost, maybe a strip sack. Eagles went 38-27. And I'm not even sure that it ends up feeling that close. That might be a touchdown in garbage time.
How did they do against tight end last week? How'd Zach Ertz look against them?
They wanted to help Zach Ertz out a little bit. He's coming up for a contract.
Okay. Right.
That's one guy.
I'm not worried about. I'm not
one guy.
I would worry about Kelce a little bit. I don't think he's past.
He'll probably do just fine.
He's going to have a big game.
Probably eat up underneath, but it'll be okay.
Yeah.
38-27.
Okay.
Jalen Hurts silences the doubters as Saquon Barkley finds the end zone multiple times. All right. I think that's it.
Good.
Big thank you to everybody who joined us today live for Snow the Goalie, live from the Snow the Goalie studio.
By the way, your boy Ford wants you to know that he's here today.
I'm so glad that he's here. Did he start dropping his comments 10 times? As nobody responded?
Yeah. He's trying to.
At some point, seven or eight channels in, he'll eventually figure it out. But anyway, big thank you to everybody who joined us live here from the Wells Fargo Center. We will be back later this week, Thursday and Saturday, with the Press Row Show. Intern Andrew will join us with hilarity, trivia, and stats of the night. Until then, follow Ant on Twitter at AntSanPhilly, Bundy on Twitter at CTerrian6. I'm on Twitter at JoyOnBroad. You can find the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get those podcasts. Subscribe, like the video, share the video, and subscribe to Snow the Goalie on YouTube. We're also on X and Facebook and TikTok. We'll talk to all of you very soon. In the meantime, thanks for checking out Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast. Talk to all of you later this week. Have a great one, everybody.